Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we present valuable sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, well-known radio sports personality Bruce McGowan, and Vern Glenn of CBS affiliate KPIX-TV in San Francisco. And today's show is going to be neat because of our guest. We're having Andy Dolich, who has been a sports executive in not only baseball, but football, and soccer and basketball, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even hockey too. So he's going to share with us for quite a long time here about some really fun stories and marketing gimmicks and things about a guy coming out of a cannon that didn't work and all kinds of things on the baseball field. It's going to be actually a lot of fun. And also at each commercial break, we're going to be asking sports trivia questions, and we're going to be giving away 3 vacations to the first 3 emails with the correct answer. The email you're going to send it to is edward@sportsecon101.com. Now, the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina. And the vacations are free. Their only request, a $75 cleaning fee to cover housekeeping expenses. And you can listen to Sports Econ 101 on iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Sports Byline USA, and CRN, amongst other terrestrial stations around the country. This segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding, get this, over 8%, paid on a monthly basis, secured by real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. I have some of my IRA money with them. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. Doesn't matter where you are, they can take money from anywhere around the country. They can also be reached 415-883-2150. Now, when we come back, we're going to be having Andy Dolich, the sports executive. Has been a sports executive for many, many, many years. It'll be a lot of fun. And don't touch that dial because you're listening to Sports Econ 101, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn.
Hello, America.
And Bruce McGowan.
Hello there.
We have a special guest on the line.
Special.
Andy Dolich. Now, this guy is a sports executive, but not in just one sport. Andy, how many sports have you been involved with?
Well, other than mud wrestling, which I know Vern has spent a fair amount of time in, we're 3 franchises in the NBA. Most recently, I was the COO of the San Francisco 49ers.
I've heard of them.
I worked for the Oakland A's for 15 years during the great era of the Haas family ownership from 1981 to 1995. I worked for the Washington Capitals in the 70s. I worked for the precursor of the wildly successful Major League Soccer called the NASL when Pele was actually playing. I worked in that fabulously well-attended sport, indoor box lacrosse, which still exists to this day.
Wow.
I completed a 2-year consultancy with IMG College, which is the biggest player in the whole world of athletic department sports marketing, and currently have a number of clients, the biggest one being Odgers Berndsen, which is the second largest retained executive search firm in Europe, but the #1 sports executive recruiter with a lot of experience in the Olympics, the Barclays Premier League. I teach at Stanford and the University of San Francisco. I'm one of the guys that helped put together the largest open basketball tournament called TBT, which just completed its first season in Boston this past Saturday night with the first prize, winner take all of $500,000.
Okay, so you have a little bit of experience.
Yeah, that's the show. That's the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
We'll be looking next week.
With Bruce McGowan and Vern Glenn.
There you go.
So I understand also, aren't you going to be working on the 2016 Super Bowl?
So I think that's Pat Gallagher. But are you involved with that?
Pat Gallagher is on the committee, Super Bowl 2016, which is headed by Keith Bruce. Pat has been on it from before they were actually a committee. He helped find the money that gave the Bay Area and the Niners the opportunity to bid against a few other cities. No, what I'll be celebrating, however, believe it or not, this October will be the 25th anniversary of the tectonic plate shifting World Series.
Yes.
When the A's beat the Giants 4-0.
Time flies,
Yeah.
and at least until last month, it looked like we could have a return of the Giants and the A's. Long way to go.
Yeah, and I'm sure Fox was hoping for that.
The A's are playing incredibly great. The Giants have some things to fix, but Pat was running the business side of the Giants in '89, and I was running the business side of the A's, and that was the Bay Bridge World Series where the rest of the country hated us, but we loved ourselves.
Yeah, you know, the amazing thing about that, Andy, we've talked about this before, is the A's of that era really were, I think, as good as the A's of the 70s, but you ran into the Dodgers of '88 with Oral Hershiser and Kirk Gibson, and then you ran into the Reds of '90 with the Nasty Boys, and I know Tony La Russa to this day is still upset about that, but you did get that one. Yeah, he's always that word.
Yeah, La Russa says that's his biggest
we
regret.
debate it all the time when groups of people from both franchises get together, and the question comes down, would you rather have won 2 out of the 3 and lost to the Giants in '89, or won that World Series and lost the other 2? Well, until the Giants, had their recent success and won 2 World Series, I definitely loved the fact that we beat the Giants, because every time I had a meeting over with anyone at the Giants, and I don't wear my World Series ring other than when I meet with Giants.
That's pretty good.
But the Bay Area has had, we are totally spoiled. I mean, the Bay Area has had for many, many decades, and now is, I think, going through another sort of golden age of sport. And, Bruce, to that point, the A's team that won 3 consecutive World Series, 72, 73, 74, had as many great players and characters as maybe the game's ever seen. Our team was spectacular. I don't know that we would have beaten the Dodgers. That was kind of a miraculous run that they had. But Cincinnati, as you speak to Tony, that was a World Series in which I think our team just had a big head and took the Reds lightly, and they lost. And I think Tony and the players would tell you that they just thought they'd show up in Cincinnati, look at Shotzi, and take home the World Series trophy. It didn't work out that way.
Hey, Andy, back when you were with the A's, I mean, one of the things myself and my former co-worker, Gary Radnich, would often talk about is the fact that the A's had...
Gary Radnich, is he still in the Bay Area?
Yeah, believe it or not. Yeah.
They can't get rid of him.
Absolutely. No, you kidding. You're my mentor. Anyway,
Yeah.
Hey, you talk about how the A's just had bona fide stars on that team. I mean, from Dave Stewart, Ricky Henderson, Canseco, McGuire. I mean, they were just flat out draws. And today, well, we do these highlights and give out the attendance for when the Red Sox are in town. And so this is 25,000, 28, maybe sometimes 20. But back then, Andy, I don't know how much you had to work from a marketing standpoint, because the A's were winning, and again, they had those colorful characters on the team.
The big difference to me, Vern, is the structure of the Bay Area at that time. You have so much competition now. You have more teams here. The Bay Area is just a place that you can wake up any day and not be interested in sports and live the greatest outdoor life of any place in the country. We did have great personalities, but more importantly, we had an ownership group in the Haas family. I've worked for 8 different ownerships in various sports, but none any better than the Haas's, because they viewed the team as truly a part of the community. And I think the Giants have done a great job that way. The Niners are back to where they were. The Sharks have a great organization. But let's face it, we have another vote tomorrow, I think, at the JPA over in Oakland for a 10-year lease extension for the A's at the Coliseum. And I'm sure we might speak more specifically about that. But it's been 7 years since the A's have said, hey, we love it here. We got to get out of here as soon as possible. We're going to Fremont. We're going to San Jose. And everyone knows that the Coliseum is the last standing location of bricks and mortar that houses an NFL and a Major League Baseball team. But we proved over a number of years their level of profitability is significant. I mean, a lot of people would never believe that the A's are making bottom line more money than the Giants, but they are because of revenue sharing and a much lower payroll.
Yeah, it's hard to
the stars. I still go to a fair amount of A's games, and Yoenis Cespedes is definitely star-like, and some of the other players that they have, and you look at what's happening in the upcoming All-Star game. So I've never bought the kind of argument that they don't have stars. They have a really likable team, and I happen to believe that Bob Melvin, if he isn't the most underrated manager in baseball, he's definitely in the top 2 or 3.
Yeah. Okay, Andy, stay with us. When we come back, I want to ask you about getting into different sports. Because usually, an executive, let's say like a Billy Beane, right? He's just in baseball only. So I just want to get into that. But we have to cut to our first commercial break. Here is the trivia question. Again, the theme is movies about basketball. These are actually going to be a little bit easier this week. Okay, which 1992 movie starred Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes about 2 basketball hustlers? The first 3 emails with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com. The answer to this question. Which 1992 movie starred Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes about 2 basketball hustlers? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back with Andy Dolich.
I can't believe it's been 22 years since that movie came out.
Kind of a silly movie, but it was a fun movie.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? I never saw it. What was it? Something like
White Men Can't Jump.
White Men Can't Jump.
And in fact, one of the guys who was the director on that project was in town recently, and he was telling the story about how Woody Harrelson, one of them could shoot, but the other one was not a ball handler.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so they had
So they'd have a stand-in? Or do a little trick photography or something?
Sleight of hand or
I
whatever.
remember Wesley Snipes, out of character, couldn't play worth a lick.
Yeah.
Well, he was in a baseball movie too, wasn't he?
Willie Mays Hayes in Major League.
But he also was in that.
One of the greatest challenges of all sports movies when you think about it.
And
what can be better than the actual event?
Yeah.
Nothing.
But he was also in a.
Even if you're a decent athlete, it just looks phony if you're trying to do an actual sports movie. The natural, other stuff like that works. But
I was thinking he was
actual sports movie is pretty hard.
I was going to say he was in a movie with Robert De Niro that was shot at.
Yeah, it was called The Fan.
Yeah, that was good.
And he played a giant star, and being stalked by De Niro.
Yeah, strange.
Sort of like
Yeah, it's all about the fish that saved Pittsburgh. Did
Oh,
you see that one?
that was with Dr. J.
It's a classic.
I love Dr.
Classic.
Basketball movies, The Hoop Dreams as a documentary, far and away the best.
That was pretty good.
It was good. And Hoosiers, you have to say with.
Hoosiers, terrific.
Terrific film. Terrific film. Gene Hackman was amazing.
Hickory High School.
I don't know. I like the what was it, 2 white chicks? Or what were the ones with the 2 guys? God, I couldn't remember now. No, actually, it's one guy who dresses like a woman to play in basketball in the NBA, in the WNBA.
Yeah, well, you got me there.
Yeah, it was
Don't
actually.
remember.
I actually enjoyed it. Got a terrible review, but I actually enjoyed it. Okay, all right.
Well, Will Ferrell, he had his movie about the old ABA, which was fairly funny.
Yeah. I do remember that one.
You guys ready? Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn
What's up?
and Bruce McGowan.
Yes, sir.
When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question, and again, the theme is movies about basketball. Which 1992 movie starred Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes about 2 basketball hustlers?
White Men Can't Jump.
White Men Can't Jump. And weren't you saying that someone couldn't play?
There was a director that was in town who was talking about Snipes and Harrelson, who played the roles, and one of them could handle the. I think it was Snipes that just could not. He just couldn't play, and then Harrelson could shoot a little bit, but not much. But they really had to work on him. I think they sent Snipes away for like 6 weeks to really kind of work at it or whatever. And
well, Andy was just talking about this off mic. Andy, we were discussing how it's very difficult for trained actors or actresses to play athletes in a movie. It looks awkward. I remember going way back. Now this is going way back to, and this is before I was born. But I remember seeing the movie William Bendix as Babe Ruth. He could not bat left-handed, so they actually had to take a shot of him batting right-handed and literally reverse.
Superimpose it.
Yeah, I mean,
my favorite example of that, Bruce, is Fear Strikes Perkins
Anthony Perkins,
and Carl Malden.
yeah.
And, he was playing Jimmy Pearsall. It was a serious topic. And, let's put it this way. Tony Perkins was better playing a baseball player in Psycho than he was your Strikes Out. That wasn't his. Who could play Tim Howard playing goalie for the, USA national team in the nail-biting game against
True.
nobody.
What about Slapshot? I wonder how those guys learned how to play, skate on the ice. Paul Newman.
Yeah, one of these topics you could talk about for hours in terms of sports movies, sports music, guys and gals that have done a pretty good job starring in these roles, but it's actually the games themselves which attract people all over the world to see the greatest athletes do their thing in an unscripted setting.
Speaking of that, what did you think of Tim Howard in that game, that last game? Because I thought that was just one of the most heroic performances. Granted, they lose the game, but I mean, the guy was just under siege from Belgium the entire contest.
Yeah, I believe at one point.
Actually, I think if you look at this World Cup, having spent a little bit of time in soccer, but not, kind of sounding somebody from the UK, I think this has been a goalkeeper's World Cup so far. I mean, if you look at the Mexican keeper, the Belgian keeper today basically saved, their waffles many times.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim Howard, this would have been a 3 or 4 goal game for Belgium. It's sad, but again, it enhances the level and slow growth that soccer has had in this country.
Yeah, it started with Pele, I would say. So, Andy, we said when we came back from break, I was going to ask you, how did you get into so many sports being an executive?
Being fairly incapable of holding a job. I was very lucky, actually, in that, everybody talks about pursuing your passion and staying with something. I went to college to be educated in government and international politics. I realized pretty quickly that I didn't have the brain power or desire to do that. And it was at a time when Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, not exactly the garden spot of the world, became the first school to offer a graduate program in sports management. So this is in the late 60s. It was actually an original idea of Walter O'Malley when he was in Brooklyn with the Dodgers. It went away, but it came back when the Dodgers moved west. Believe it or not, gentlemen, today there's 375 sports management programs in the United States.
Wow.
And I happen to be lucky enough. I'll be teaching tonight at Stanford School of Continuing Studies, and I've been with them for 2 years. I'm teaching a course called So You Want to Work in Sports, if you can believe that.
Yeah, so I mean,
I have 60 students, which is a pretty good number. And the University of San Francisco, which has had an excellent sports management program for well over 20 years, is moving in a new path with a purely online master's program in collegiate athletics, because that is the next great frontier of sports managers. College sports is becoming so much more complicated, so much more driven by the dollar. We see it here with the Ed O'Bannon case, the building of incredible facilities, both at Stanford and Cal and a lot of other places throughout Northern California. So we'll be starting an MBA program with 20 students. They could go online and at USF and their collegiate athletics program and get information, and we're really excited about that.
You got to keep bringing in alumni money. So when you teach your class, what's the gist of it?
Well, people ask me in the class, like, what do you do, Dolich? Because all you do is seem to bring in guests in various areas. And essentially what I do is I try to act like a poor man's Charlie Rose.
Oh, okay.
I bring in people that have expertise in particular areas. So, if we're talking about executive recruiting, I'll bring in friends that I know that are lead executive recruiters. If we're talking about people that work in the pros, I'd bring in my friend Pat Gallagher or people from other teams that I've worked with, so that the people in the class are getting a face-to-face opportunity to interact with people they probably never could get to or would take them a longer time. And basically, we just go down the path of what some of the opportunities are. everybody kind of looks at sports and says, well, hey, I want to go work for the 49ers. You know, they're opening up a new stadium, and the team is great, and blah, blah. Well, those jobs are pretty well taken. I espouse and have for a long time, give me chaos and disaster. Give me something that's on fire. Run to that, and I'm sure Bruce, you and Vern have many examples, especially on the broadcast and writing side. You don't just go to work for, the network. You don't just go to work for the New York Times. You got to start someplace that most people wouldn't even consider starting their careers and work your way up. It's pretty much the exact same way in sports.
I remember my first job in Auburn, California, a little 5,000-watt AM/FM outfit where you had to turn on the radio station, do the commercials, read the news, be a disc jockey, do high school play-by-play for $15 a game, and then when the cows who were outside in a pen, believe it or not, that was being rented out this hillside with barbed wire around it, would sometimes get loose, you'd have to put on a long playing record and get a lariat and go bring the cow back in. I kid you not. This was a job I had, my first job in radio. So, yeah, and those experiences, Andy, those are so precious because when you do have to go to some place and work your butt off for a lot less money than you like, you get the chance to do everything. And I think the young people...
Absolutely. If you talk to people that have become big-time broadcasters, you will always, from Al Michaels to whomever you want to talk to, they started out in, as you said, Bruce, a cow town, where maybe the only people listening to them were their own family and friends.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time. I mean, my first job in sports after I got out of Ohio University was with the Philadelphia 76ers, and everybody goes, well, how cool is that? You went to work in the NBA. If you know a little bit about history, when I went there in 1971, I was there from 71 to 74.
Oh my gosh, you were there during the nine win season? Oh
It.
my God.
I was the administrative assistant to the general manager when the team went 9-73.
Oh my God.
And that is not, you did not hear that incorrectly.
Oh my God.
9-73.
And Fred Carter, the best player on the worst team of all time? Something like that?
Pretty Mad Dog Carter.
That's him.
long before...
Maryland.
Yeah.
Wow.
Huge Trapp, who was the only player suspended in the NBA for not washing his uniform for 2 weeks.
True story, really?
Yeah, luckily anytime a team sucks in the NBA, which happens every few years, I get called because I've been featured in a number of articles about that season. And in actuality, it taught me more than if I had worked for a great championship team, because essentially it was chaos and disaster. And as a young punk, I had more responsibility then than I ever would have had if I was the third assistant to the executive assistant to nobody at a championship team.
Was that your greatest marketing challenge?
No, I don't think so. When you're trying to sell a brand new sport like indoor box lacrosse, that's a tough one. Or you're trying to sell the NHL in Washington. I mean, I was part of the first group with the Capitals, so you're out there in the summer when it's 98 degrees and 173% humidity, trying to get a meeting with somebody at the CIA to talk about buying season tickets to DC. Not exactly an easy thing to do.
Well, I guess with the 76...
And clearly the A's, Charlie Finley had done a great job, and Bruce knows this as well as anybody because he's chronicled this as he was growing up. But Charlie Finley was a great self-promoter, but he was an absentee owner. He had no front office other than Carl Finley and a few other people, and didn't care about what they did in Oakland. And even with those incredible teams, star athletes, they didn't draw. A little bit of a parallel to what's happening today. And so turning that around took a while, but luckily we created Billy Ball in 1981, and that kind of changed the way that people saw sports teams marketed.
Okay, hey, Andy, stay,
we went out and played great.
Andy, stay with us. Stay with us for just 1 minute. We're going to cut to a really quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to finish up with you and then move on to a couple of other things. And I guess for during that 76ers, you probably, the marketing thing is come out and watch the streak continue. Of course, it's a losing streak. Okay, what 1994 movie was a documentary about two teenagers from Chicago who were aspiring to be professional basketball players? The first three emails with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com. The answer to this question, what 1994 movie was a documentary about two teenagers from Chicago who were aspiring to be professional basketball players? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back. I know you got one fast.
Good.
All righty.
It's too bad we can't have you on for a whole hour here.
Oh, man.
Andy, you can tell us so many good
Well,
stories.
hopefully this will be part one of the 92 part.
Well, you know what? It's okay. I mean, even though I got other things, they're not that important. I mean, we got some great stories. That's.
I'd love
all I
to
care
get,
about is doing
your
good
thoughts
radio.
about about Billy Martin and some of the
Yeah.
personalities on that A's team that you. You're right. That was the most one of the most colorful groups of athletes.
I'd like to know the best guy Andy had to work with, and maybe the most challenging guy. I mean, just to get him to do
Sure,
stuff.
I like that. Most challenging. That doesn't sound negative. That just sounds like, well,
Some of these players. I mean,
Happy to people on pedestals and throw them under buses.
That's it. All right. So, why don't you ask that question?
Sure.
We got that. Okay. Here we go.
You still down the peninsula, Andy, or are you over in the East Bay? I keep forgetting.
I have a place in Los Altos and a place in Calistoga, so I get to move around, make sure the authorities never really know. I like what Vern has done over
you're just eluding the long arm of the law.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, you never want them to know where you are, right, Brian?
That's right.
All right. Hold on.
So sad. I'm always looking over my shoulder.
All right. Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn and Bruce McGowan.
Yes.
When we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. What 1994 movie was a documentary about two teenagers from Chicago who were aspiring to be professional basketball players?
Bruce, you want to take that one?
No, you knew the question before I did, or the answer, but it was Hoop Dreams, wasn't it?
Hoop Dreams.
Well, you guys see, I had to
Yeah.
keep my mouth shut when you guys were kind of off mic, kind of talking about all these great basketball movies.
I forgot what a great documentary that was. It really was.
And Vern, you wanted to ask Andy a question?
Yeah, Andy. I mean, in your long and established career, who's been maybe the best guy to work with as far as getting him to do stuff, and maybe the most challenging guy that he's like, hey, just say, man, I'm just here to play, man. I don't want to do anything.
It's a long list, Vern. I'll start on the positive side. I was lucky enough to be in Memphis with Shane Battier. And Shane Battier is what you'd want a quality athlete and a quality person to be in every way, shape, or form. And, we had Pau Gasol, Shane Battier, the high flyer, Stromile Swift during those years. Having developed a relationship with Dave Stewart in Oakland, there's no better person than Dave Stewart.
Agreed.
In terms of what he exemplified for that team. He was the heart and soul of that team, even though he had such huge personalities. I mean, the Bash Brothers and Eck and, the late Bob Welch, which is so sad, and Captain Carney and Armis and Steinbach and Big Dave Parker, the Cobra. That team, as you said, Bruce, really had as much firepower and as much magnetism as anybody, along with Billy Martin. And, was Billy a difficult guy to work with? No, you always have to pick your places in sports. So if you're on the business, marketing, sales side of a team, you have to understand what the daily routine is of these athletes. In terms of, absolutely really bad guys, the good news in sports is the really bad guys disappear. It doesn't seem, at least in my career, it doesn't seem as if the really bad guy's personality, even if they've got some ability, have staying power. Because at the end of the day, it is teamwork, and it is the capability of working with people. And even though certain athletes have incredible star power, but if they're jerks, the system usually churns them out. I'd say overall, hockey players are probably the best guys to work with because they don't necessarily have all that star power when they're growing up. Basketball players can be a little bit hinky because they're stars by the time they're 12 years old. Baseball players, a lot of really good guys, and football players can be intimidating. But again, with their time in college, they kind of get it. Their only challenge is it's such a demanding sport physically that they know that they don't have a long time play the game, so they can be kind of distant. And of course, if you get smacked in the head enough times, you can be really distant.
That's true, yeah.
Well, that's for sure.
You have any fun stories for us?
In terms of being smacked in the head, well, I don't think I've ever had a concussion. But in terms of stories in sports, it's like that show, The Naked City, that used to be on TV. There's 8 million people in New York City at that time, and there's 8 million great stories. There was something that just comes to mind. We were really big on presenting the first pitch baseball in Oakland during the years that I was there, as you guys probably remember, in unique fashion. We'd have Carl Walenda, we'd have hype people flying in, and one year we had a pyro ball that came from the top of the Coliseum all the way to home plate, and we had guys in fire retardant suits get the ball and put it out and then give it to the pitcher. So it was a different ball. But if you remember the great Zucchini, the guy that shot himself out of a cannon,
Yeah.
I decided, I always loved the kind of circus stuff. I said, all right, we'll put the guy in center field. We'll give him a ball. We'll shoot him from center field to a net on the Coliseum pitcher's mound. He'll bounce out of the net and give, I think it was actually Chris Cottaroli. You guys remember Chris Cottaroli, who pitched for the A's, and he'll give the ball to our pitcher. Well, this was the day before tarps at the Coliseum. We did not believe in tarping any seat. We believed in selling the seats, not tarping the seats.
All right.
And so we had a crowd of 50+ thousand. And it was, George Costa, who worked for us and now works over at AT&T. George had his walkie-talkies, and he was on the site, and we're all getting ready, and people are counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Absolutely nothing happens. And I'm going like, this is not good. So, you shouldn't have got out of the cannon. Let's give it a second shot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Absolutely not. And I'm screaming.
The cannon didn't go off?
And boom, right in the middle, it goes off. He lands perfectly in the net, and everybody went home happy.
Oh, good.
So, it's circumstances like that, no matter what you plan for. Clearly, to me, in going through the Earthquake World Series, as we talked about, hopefully nobody has to go through that again, but that was a moment that nobody will forget because it was probably the first time the major natural disaster was broadcast live on a network, and what we went through in the Bay Area over those 3 or 4 weeks. And I really do think that the A's and the Giants helped the Bay Area recover from what was, a horrific time throughout every level of the Bay Area.
And I always remember Dave Stewart going over to the Cypress structure. For those that, a lot of people are listening to this don't know what the Cypress structure is. It was an elevated freeway in Oakland that pancaked on top. The lower deck was crushed from the upper deck, and there were about 40 or 50 people. There would have been a lot more killed had the World Series not been going on. And Dave Stewart was down there handing food and drink to the workers, and they pulled some guy out named Buck Helm. After 5 days, he was stuck in that thing. It's an amazing story. A lot of drama and a lot of tragedy. But,
to me, what people, having spent 43 years of my adult life in all manner of sports, people always say, "Well, what's your number one significant event?" And the way that I answer it wasn't any one event. I don't know what the total number of people is, but having worked for all these teams over a long period of time since 1971 and then through 2010 with the Niners, enjoying themselves, seeing these great athletes and seeing smiles on their faces, and being a part of presenting that in a safe environment. That's what is always my top memory of sports, whether it was 1971 or 72 with the worst team in the history of the NBA, or whether it was winning the World Series, with Tony Phillips and Dennis Eckersley ending the game. I'll take that.
Well, let me ask you, in the early years of the Oakland Coliseum, did they have like a rabbit come out and give the balls to?
That was before he was around, but
Yeah.
Andy knows about that story. Charlie Finley had all the crazy little
Oh, yeah.
promotions, the rabbit, and of course Charlie O the mule. And did you get any of your ideas from some of that? Were you inspired by that at all, Andy? Some of the crazy
Well,
things. that Charlie
actually, Bill Veeck, the great Bill Veeck, that person famous for bringing Eddie Goodell up to bat in a major league game, the 3'6" tall Eddie Goodell. I looked at what Finley said, but there was another great promoter that doesn't really get his due. It was more in basketball and in the Negro Leagues, a guy named Eddie Gottlieb, who actually owned the Philadelphia 76ers, and they became the Warriors out here. Maybe that's a show for another day, but I picked up stuff from all of those people, plus what was done in minor league baseball. And to me, one of the great mysteries is that clearly Charlie Finley, Orange Baseball's Charlie O the Mule, the Mechanical Rabbit, night games, wildly colored uniforms, going against the norm. Charlie Finley was a brilliant self-promoter, but for whatever reason, he was a horrible marketer.
Right.
If you took that team that he had with the Haas way of doing business, Bruce, we would have drawn close to 3 million, and they weren't even drawing 1 million.
Isn't that amazing? You could walk up to
$1 million 1 year
Yeah.
of those 3 years that they won the World Series.
I was going to say, you could walk up during the playoffs, during the American League Championship Series, and buy a ticket. There were still 10,000 seats the first year when they played Detroit. It was unbelievable.
There was 1 year that I guess, the late Sam Berkovich, who recently passed away, the Berkovich family, they didn't have a radio station, and I guess they had, or you would remember this, they had 100 miles of string and 42 juice cans on Avenue, which was their listening range. The scoreboard didn't work at the Coliseum after the third. Forget about video boards. Just the scoreboard didn't work after the third or fourth inning. No concessions, no nothing. And hopefully, Oakland, I think it's very, very sad that the Warriors clearly are gone, and they will build their new arena in the Mission. In South of Market and on Mission Rock, where they're going to be Mission Bay. I'm sorry. And there's still a battle now for the A's, and whither go the Raiders. So I would hope that they're able to work out through teamwork, logic, and intelligence to keep those two teams there. Because if Oakland loses both of those two teams, that would be a really sorry state of affairs.
Yeah, it'd be the beginning of the end. Yep.
No question. And Oakland is such a downtrodden place to begin with, and it's had to live in the shadow of San Francisco for so many years. And I still, to this day, have to tell you, as much as I love going to Packville Park or AT or whatever you call it nowadays, and Candlestick was fun, it's so much more pleasant for some reason to go over to Oakland to watch the game, because it's more of a community thing, and it always has been, whether it's Raiders, A's, or Warriors.
Well, it's easier to
And I think if you look at the economy, which is red hot throughout the Bay Area, if you ask people, take me to the Silicon Valley, they go, you mean South of Market? You mean Cupertino? You mean Oakland? You mean Dublin? It's exploded, and Oakland is the beneficiary because, unless you're a multimillionaire like Vern Glenn, you can't afford to live.
Yeah, housing is amazingly cheap.
And you can't afford to live in some of the other suburbs, and Oakland is affordable. Oakland, just think, guys, about the transportation center that you have right there in the Coliseum Station in 880. All the different routes and the airport.
The airport is so much easier to get out of Oakland than it is San Francisco.
You couldn't pay to get that done these days.
Yeah,
so all
go
this
to San
talk about
Francisco.
Howard Terminal and going here and going there,
Tell you what,
Our field
Andy.
location is the best
Andy,
for
Andy.
those teams.
Okay, Andy, you know, we got to cut to our last commercial break. We want to thank you very much for joining us on Sports Econ 101. You were listening to Andy Dolich and all of his fun stories. All right.
More to come, hopefully.
More to come.
Thanks so much, Andy. That was great stuff.
Okay, look forward to it. We'll always remember what happened right before we went on the air.
Yes,
That's right.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Okay, bye, guys.
Okay, which 2006 movie told the story of Texas Western winning the 1966 NCAA National Basketball Championship? The first three emails, Edward at sportsecon101.com will win a 3-day, 2-night stay at Lighthouse Resort. So here's the question. Which 2006 movie told the story of Texas Western winning the 1966 NCAA National Basketball Championship? I think Pat Riley was on the other side, right?
He was.
He was.
Okay, don't touch that dial. When Sports Econ 101 comes back, we'll be having some closing comments.
Yeah, my dad always said, "Yeah, it was more than a game."
Yeah.
That game, yeah.
Wait, what was it? What about it?
The game.
Your dad said
Yeah.
what?
My dad said it was more than a game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
1966.
Yeah.
That's a good movie.
65,
65, 66,
Yeah.
something like that.
Great movie.
Yeah. That wasn't a bad movie either.
No, it was
I'm
good.
trying to remember
I
the
enjoyed
guy
it.
who played the coach
National
for...
McConaughey, didn't he?
Was it
No.
No, it wasn't him.
Uh-huh.
No.
No,
It was a guy
it
kind
was
of
like it reminded you of him, but it
Yeah.
wasn't.
No,
him.
not an actor who's not really that well known, but he's been in a bunch of things. You'd recognize him.
Good character actor.
Yeah, good character actor. That movie
Kurt
didn't do real
Russell.
well at the box office. I thought it was
Was Kurt Russell? No, he did.
No.
He did the Ice.
He did a Miracle on Ice thing. Yeah. And I can't even remember the name of that movie. Can you remember?
Glory Road.
Glory Road. There you go.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't remember how many
Yeah.
people would remember the name of the movie. That's very
Yeah.
good. See, I figured I'd do it a little easier.
It's so funny. Pat Riley played on the, Adolph Rupp
Yeah.
refused to integrate the University of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And Pat Riley today is considered one of the, and he's a good guy, but I mean, he played on one of the last really,
Yeah.
truly segregated all-white
But-
teams.
He was just a player, so it wasn't.
He was
his
just a
fault.
player.
Yeah.
He
But,
was
yeah.
a New York kid.
Yeah,
You know
that's right.
that didn't play. He
Yeah.
didn't play in North Carolina. He went to
Yeah.
Kentucky.
I remember
Yeah.
Freddie Biletnikoff told me the same story when he went to, I think it was Florida State.
Florida State.
Yeah, and he said we used to hang out with the guys across town who were at the, I think Florida A&M, which was the all-black school, because they would, during the break, the kids would go off, his teammates would go off someplace, and he wanted to, he was from Erie, Pennsylvania, so he didn't go home.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Very good. All right, guys,
here we go.
finish this off.
And there's another for you.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn.
Down the stretch he comes.
There he comes, and Bruce McGowan.
Shoot for two.
That's it. Okay, so here's the third final trivia question. Which 2006 movie told the story of Texas Western winning the 1966 NCAA National Basketball Championship? Vern.
That would be Glory Road.
It would be.
Yeah.
Now, what's the name of the team called now?
Isn't it Texas El Paso?
It's UTEP.
But they were
That's right.
weren't they
Yeah.
the minors, the UTEP minors in those days? I think they were.
They might have been, yeah. That
Against
was
the Kentucky Wildcats of Adolph Rupp, who was
with the great Pat Riley.
Pat Riley
That's what
was-
they said,
yeah.
the great Pat Riley.
Yeah, he was a good supporting player on the team. Actually, he was a starter. He was a good NBA
And
player.
he was a consultant on that movie.
Yeah.
In fact, in the closing credits, you see a soundbite from
Oh,
Pat.
sure. You
during
should
the
have
closing
him.
credits.
I
of the
mean,
movie.
how could you not have him? He could tell you all the stories about Adolph Rupp. Who,
Let's get him on the show.
why not? I'm sure seriously, I think he'd probably do it.
The power of sports econ.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get a hold of Pete Carroll, and he hasn't returned the
Oh,
call yet.
he's,
A rascal. You went to school with him.
he's a year ahead of me. But he's tough to get, but we'll give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here's our thoughts for the day. Now get ready for this. Are you guys sitting down for this one?
As a matter of fact, I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
Baseballs were originally made from the foreskins of horses.
Mhm.
No comment.
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay, now
That doesn't surprise me.
I'm chafing. Go ahead.
Oh, man.
and I love this one.
Uh,
Bear Bryant, we all know who he was once asked to contribute $10 to pay for a sports writer's funeral. According to legend, he said, "Here's a 20, bury two."
Oh, jeez. That sounds like a football coach.
Whether
That
they're
really
alive or
even
not.
today they're that way sometimes. Jeez.
All right, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and giving away how many 9 more free vacations for answering sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.